Hello everybody, how you doing? I hope you're well wherever you are in the world, and if not, maybe we can provide you some light entertainment. And my phone is talking to me, and I'm sure I turned it down before, but hey, whatever, doesn't matter. Right, so what are we up to? Yeah, the weird colour in there is actually just a clip. It's a unicorn clip. See, there's a little unicorn horn. But I was in a Zoom meeting earlier on today and I waved it around and said, somebody said, please wear it, just for the fun of it, So here we go. Oh, and I've just remembered I need to turn chat on. I still haven't done my checklist, have I? Maybe you guys can help me to remember to create a checklist before I start, so that I can cover everything I need to do and make sure it's done when I go live. That sort of thing. If you are not already, then come and join the Discord server, and you can leave comments about that sort of thing over in the Discord server to help me to remember, make suggestions, that sort of stuff. I'll just write that in here. Sorry. I might be a little bit scatty today. It's been one of those days. I'm really sorry about that. I managed to get dinner in the slow cooker downstairs in the kitchen. So that's good. I don't have to worry about cooking dinner. I made an executive decision about not doing two meals because one was some meat that was going to need to be used today and the other was some meat that's for tomorrow. But I wanted to do the slow cooker one, which is the tomorrow meat. So we're having that for dinner tonight, and the other lot's in the freezer instead. And we'll have that another day. So it'll last a little bit longer. Anyway, what else? Yeah, for some reason or other, I seem to be exceptionally distracted at the moment. The whole ADHD sort of thing is just sort of buzzing around in my head. So if you find me looking all over the place, it's just that. Okay, give me some grace, let it go, not a problem. What I need to tell you, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff I need to tell you. There is, I know there is. I've got my phone plugged in, I've got it on the channel so I can keep an eye on it if anyone comments about anything, that sort of stuff. I've got chat turned on. I am actually technically streaming. Not only am I technically streaming, there are no dropped frames. That's good, because sometimes it does. Sometimes our internet connection goes a little bit wonky. Technically, it's because we're in an area of Greater Auckland, which is the city that we're technically part of. Even though technically we're part of lots of technicallys, aren't they? Just sort of throw in a technically. It's like allegedly. We're in a part of the city proper. No, not city proper. Technical city that was rural, is now rural urban. There's a small suburb around where I live. There's another one over the hill in the next bay. And then we go into town and we see the actual town centre where you have the shop, all the different shops and services and all that sort of thing going on. Anyway, so but it means rural, that's what I was saying. We have a little local telephone exchange here, and all of the numbers for telephone numbers, the landline telephone numbers in our area have a certain prefix to them. It's not a toll number, it's actually just the first part of our phone numbers are all the same because it's all handled through that little telephone exchange. Now, that was built a very, very long time ago. Yes, I know I'm rambling, but this is my channel, this is my information, I'm sharing it. So just sort of let it go or enjoy it or tune out or tune in, whatever. Anyway, so the little telephone exchange up the road has been over the years upgraded in lots of different ways, and because of miniaturization, they've managed to fit the newer hardware into the older space except for a small container unit which is also associated with it. And also I think they have like air conditioning units for it and things like that so it doesn't get too warm. And there's a cell phone tower and all sorts of things, but it also handles our fibre connections. All the fibre that comes along the street past us goes straight along to that. And people used to say to me, oh, it's not to do with how far away from the exchange you are, it's how far away from the cabinet you are. That's a technical thing. The cabinet in New Zealand, often because a lot of our services are underground, the cabinet is actually a hole in the ground that's got a special service plate over the top. Otherwise, it's actually a cabinet on the side of the road where the wires come along and then come up into it and they're all plugged into the right places and then they carry on. Well, there's actually none of those service ports or cabinets between us and the exchange, so therefore we are actually going wired directly into the exchange. But the main spine of the system that goes from here to the next main service place is getting a bit old. The hardware that it's using, the actual wiring that it's using, or whatever it is not that great. And so sometimes there'll be issues somewhere along the way. It's not all underground. There's a lot of it that's actually overground on poles because we are, sorry, my hair's all sticking out with fluffy bits. I should have left it alone. Because our main road here is along the ridge and our house is right next to the main road and the ridge. And we are next to the sea, and this is New Zealand. It's a high wind area, which means that you get a lot of wind blows across the ridge, and there are times when trees will drop branches on the power and phone lines, or a car will be driving along, lose control because it's bad weather or someone's drunk or something like that, and crash into the pole will come down, and then the power and the phone will be cut. So hopefully we won't have any of that today, but there's lots of little minor hiccups too, which suddenly mean that we've got things being slowed down in all sorts of ways. Anyway, all that sort of stuff, just general stuff like that. Just checking something over here. Okay, that actually showed, I'm just checking up a notification. It went through later than I was expecting it to. Anyway, that's all right. Doesn't matter. I'm putting a funny face on the notification. And I thought I'd adjusted my lighting so that it would look a little bit better, but I think something's done an update and set one of my things in another part of the technical stuff. Technical, to use a technical term. Yeah. So we'll get there. Right, so I've given you the Discord server. I've also given you the... No, I haven't given you anything else, have I? I've not been very generous at all today. So those of you who are watching on Twitch, I'm going to give you my YouTube link. Here it is. I'll put my arms out behind it so you can read it. Get my hair out of the way. It's a bit bright. There you go. So there's my YouTube channel, youtube.com//C for channel, and then /C again, and then my username, which is the same as it is here on Twitch, Jev with 3 V's, JEVVVNZ, no dots in my name. So there you go. So if you're on Twitch and you want to go and look at one of my playlists for one of the books I've read previously, that's where you go. This place here that's on the screen now. If you are on YouTube and you want to actually find me easily on Twitch, a great way to do it would be just to use this link here. And that way you'll be able to interact with me when I go live on Twitch. Twitch is where I stream live, and YouTube is where I put the videos afterwards about 2 weeks later. Two, there you go. Unusually, I have a 2 point. Twitch is where I go live, and YouTube is where I put the videos. Crop off that beginning bit which says starting soon and all that sort of stuff, and just put the video itself. This bit here, the video itself. None of the overlay that's over there, which later on will show you a jigsaw puzzle. Currently is showing you the title of the book, A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil, and also a thumbnail of the book cover, and also the term I use for what we do here, story time, and what my current time and date is. And the reason why I have that on my Twitch channel is because I have people who are watching this from all over the world live, and so sometimes it helps if you understand what time of day it is and even what day of the week, because I live near the dateline. What day of the week it is compared with where you are. And so therefore I decided the other day, let's put that up there where you can see it. And you'll see the time will change from time to time. More repetition. Anyway, I'm going to turn that one off now. You don't need to keep looking at that. So yeah, if you're on YouTube and you want to watch the be involved with the live activities. So that means you can chat in the chat box, you can play jigsaw puzzles, you can get links that I sometimes put into the chat box, which you can then actually click on and go and action them, such as joining the Discord server or finding out about something that I put a link over there for you, or that sort of thing. So all of that sort of stuff is more accessible if you watch when I am actually live over on YouTube, on Twitch, which is why I've put this link down here, this bit here, this bit here. So it's twitch.tv/jevvnz. And I'm going to have to do something about that lighting. It's terrible. I did tweak it before, but it's not really doing what it should do. I think I might just do it now after I turn off that link graphic for you. Camera, filters, let's see what we can sort out for you. Ow! Sorry, I brought my elbow down on I have my desk here, and then I have my other desk, which has lots of stuff on it, over here. But I just brought my elbow down on it a little bit too hard. And if you hear any thumps and bangs apart from me, it's probably because my husband has just come back from, where from? Up north, an hour and a half or 2 hours north of here, and that kind of works. I'm just trying to make it so the dark part is darker, and then I need to take the brightness, the gamma, down a bit. So he's been up north a couple of hours drive away, and he's come back after having done some chainsaw work. And the chainsaw work was to get wood for the urns that he makes. That's a bit better. Let's see if we can go one better than that. No, you removed that information. Sorry, we'll get there. I did have this set up before. I don't know why it didn't hold. It's a bit better, I think. Maybe we'll put this back too. I don't know. Whatever, that's what we're going to go with for now. And also I've remembered that what I see on my monitor is not necessarily accurate, because my monitors, I have two monitors. One, two. I have two monitors. See, I have two hands and two monitors. It's not how many fingers it is this time, it's the hands. I have two monitors, one here where I'm seeing what I'm doing, and this is where most of my actual streaming controls are, and one that's over here which has got my browser on. Did that just go dark? Anyway, over here, which has got my browser, and I can see other bits and pieces on. And I was telling you that for a reason, and I have no idea why. Anyway, oh yeah, the color between the two looks a little bit different. So I'm seeing the stream as you're seeing it when you're seeing it on one of them, and on the other one I'm seeing it as I'm actually recording it. And the color between the two should be the same, because it's only a moment or two. It's like a few seconds difference. But in actual fact, what I see on one is not the same as what I see on the other. And I can't do anything about that, because they're actually set up slightly differently in their own brains. Now, why is it that I'm here talking to myself? I don't know. Maybe it's because people don't know I'm streaming. So maybe we should go and tell them. Let's come with me and we'll go and tell them over on Twitter. Yes, I've got a noisy keyboard. Hum away, keep yourself occupied. Sorry, this is a little bit longer because it's actually a reply to somebody else first. I really need to because they're streaming and they may actually need to talk about this. Right, now get back to what I was doing. Right. ADHD, anyone? Seriously distracted? I know I'm live. I know I am going to be reading to you very shortly. And here I am looking at tweets. That's right, I was going to write a tweet about going live. Okay, now that one went through. Let's see how we go. Let's see if I can kind of find a cat picture because cat pictures seem to be what people like. We have a cat. Well, we have my daughter's cat. So let's look for the cat folder. Cat. Let's find a cat picture. It's so cute. Right, there, that's done. That's out of the way. And we'll see if there's any response from that. And we're going to ignore the rest of that for now and carry on with what we're doing. So where do we get to in the story? We started a new book last time. It was called A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. And yes, it looks like Brazil, the name of the country, but it's actually pronounced Brazil, probably because she was going to get hassled by people at school. I don't know if the family were, but as a kid at school, you know, you get hassled if your surname was a bit different to everybody else's. Right, so I'm guessing that's why they said it differently. Anyway, so Angela Brazil, and she wrote a whole heap of them. She's actually the lady who started the whole idea of writing girls' school stories that the readers that they were written for, the preteen girls and the early teen girls of around the beginning of the 1900s, thoroughly enjoyed and just got so caught up in them that they would take them into class, the teachers would take them off them, all this sort of stuff. And the reason why is because she wrote these books as fun adventures for girls, where the girls were in charge of what was going on in the story. Yeah, there was some stuff with adults in them and things like that, but the adults and them trying to teach the girls a lesson and all that sort of stuff wasn't the main focus of it. It was actually the adventures that the girls got up to. And they were often set, this one isn't, but they were often set at girls' schools, which were quite prolific at the time for a certain sector of society. And it basically initiated this whole style of story, which, I mean, there's a whole section of writing from this era and a little bit after it that was very, very prolific. And they were schoolgirl stories. So you've got things like the Chalet School. There's a lot of people who grew up reading the Chalet School books, and there are hundreds of them, I think, from what I understand. There were a certain number of them, and then I think there's some others who've gone on and written more in the same line. This particular author, she wrote a bunch of books, but there were never any more than 3 books in any of her series, whereas Chalet School is a big series. And those ones I think were written by a lady called Eleanor Brent Dwyer. This one is, as I said, Angela Brazil. And like I say, they were set at girls' schools, girls' boarding schools, but it was more the particular cluster of friends in each story or in each series. That was the focus. And so, therefore, because the girls are going to be growing up and things like that, she would just then move on to another school, another story set, another friend set, and things like this. And so it was able to keep it in some ways a little bit fresher. Now, we would probably find a lot of these stories, if we were seeing them as new publications now, we would find them a little bit, I suppose you could call it twee, a little bit simple. Yeah, innocent in some ways, which is part of what we like about reading these particular stories, is it's like it's not tainted by a lot of the pressures and stresses and stuff we have going on around us. It's a whole other world, but also a little bit, not so much simple as naive, I would say, but also that there's a lot more influence of the culture that they were involved in at the time, the type of society that was going on at the time. And we have to realize that this is common with all of the books we read, that whoever the author is, it doesn't matter what period they are setting their story, even if they are trying to be as authentic to it as possible, the society that they live in and the way that they personally respond to that society, there are aspects of it that they agree with and disagree with, will still come through in what they write. I'm just seeing if that, yes, it worked. So I've just given you the disclaimer that I use for my Twitch channel. I might actually have to transfer that over to YouTube too, writing that down. There you go. For things to do that I need to remember. So the idea behind it is that I'm letting you know that there are aspects of any story that I read which you may not agree with. And that's okay. We can learn things we don't agree with. We can learn how we have learned from society. We have progressed. We have developed new ideas. But there are also some positive things we can learn from old stuff as well. It's not all negative. We are not necessarily better than others before us. And that's, I think, something we need to recognize in ourselves, that it's very easy to pick up an attitude of we're better than they were. They ought to have known better. Well, they were going based on what they had learnt from previous generations. And they probably thought that about others before them. Hi, Blue, great to have you here. We're only really just getting going, so you haven't missed too much. I've just given the disclaimer and that's about it. And I took ages trying to write up a tweet and also reply to somebody else who was asking me a question about something. So that's why I've got this disclaimer, and I will read it out loud so that you know what it says, since I haven't yet got it on my YouTube channel, and it does mean that those over on YouTube will get to see it. Will get to hear it, if not see it. So this stream includes works of fiction or auto or actual biographies, any references to events, people or places, real, imaginary, past or present, are used at the discretion of the author's memories, imaginations and external sources. These works may include negative depictions, slang, terminology, mistreatment of people or cultures which may trigger some audiences. Rather than remove or alter this content, we acknowledge its impact with reasonable and moderated conversation. And conversation at this point in a story would be me acknowledging something. No, you didn't miss anything yet. There's no story to have missed yet. Acknowledging something that we have just read that may be something we don't agree with. But if you want to get into deeper discussion than that, if you want to get into a warm, preferably not a warmer discussion, but a more detailed discussion about it, then join the Discord server, which I'm giving you a link for now. If you're over on Twitch, and if you're on YouTube, then you need to look for the link for my Discord server. It is over there on YouTube. And if you can't find it, or if it's not working, then leave me a comment on one of my YouTube videos so that I can actually get that fixed for you. Right, and I'm pretty sure that link works at the moment. So if you do need to get into, if you do want to talk about some things to do with what gets covered in any of the stories, join the Discord server and come and have a discussion. But keep in mind that this is meant to be a family-friendly, family-safe place. So if you've got attitudes which are a little bit strong, we do want to keep them a little bit modified, okay? Thanks. We want it to be a place that's safe for grannies and their grandkids who otherwise think that the internet's a big scary place. I want to demonstrate to them that not all of the internet is like that, which is partly why I have chosen to read old children's books. So this is probably a good time for me to introduce myself to those who are new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, one such as this. And yes, I've got my green screen adjusted. If I had cheese here, it would probably think it was green even if it's yellow. Okay, so this is an old book. I can show you how old it is because of the style of the illustrations, sort of the clothes that they are wearing in it. This book was given to my grandmother's brother 125 years ago, which means it was printed either 125 years ago or more. And yeah, we still have it because, there's nothing wrong with it. It hasn't fallen apart. It's not rubbish. It's a reasonable book to read and it's kept people entertained. So we still have them. I grew up reading those books. Not that particular one because Dad only found that recently in a box of his mother's stuff, I think, that had been tucked away up in an attic or something. But most of the books I read when I was growing up either were from school or they were from parents and grandparents handing down their old books, which meant it was normal for me to read about other people, other places, other times, other parts of the world, not just down the road other places, but other sides of the world, other time zones, all this sort of stuff. Some of them were imaginary history and other ones were pure fantasy. Other ones, again, were slice of life type little stories about children and what was going on around them. Some of them were ones which had a high moral, other ones were just for the fun of it. So we've read a couple of William books, maybe 3 William books, I can't remember. He's a plucky little boy who lives in an English country village just out of a town, and he gets into mischief. Usually it's not intentional. Usually it's because adults have said something and they don't realise how ambiguous what they said was. And he has taken them literally because he's not super clever and bright. He's just an ordinary little boy. And so he acts on what he has understood. And then he gets in trouble for it. Or the adults do. They think that he's going to get in trouble, but they do because they realise that they really weren't very clear about what they'd said. So we have a lot of fun with those sort of ones. And then we have other ones where we've got children who are trying to restore the family fortunes. We've had several 3-book series like that. And there's a certain author who writes those sort of ones very well. And usually the children along the way get into a bit of mischief accidentally. Sometimes it's just because they haven't thought things through a little far enough. And the thread on those ones of restoring the family fortunes is a little bit of an idea behind what keeps the story going, but it's the adventures they have along the way, which is really what the fun is. Then there are others which are classics that everybody's heard of before, like The Secret Garden, The Little Princess, The Railway Children, Alice in Wonderland, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I think is the proper title for that, and its sequel, Alice Through the Looking Glass. I can't remember the name now. We haven't had Winnie the Pooh. The Wind in the Willows, all sorts of things, lots of ones that lots of people know. I was going to say everybody knows, but they don't. My generation, it seemed like everybody knew these stories. But they're actually falling out of fashion unless they get made into a new TV series or a new movie. And a lot of children don't know what the original references are. And there's a lot of details in books when you read them that aren't in movies unless those particular details meant a lot to the people who are making those movies and they find a way to involve them. But the problem with a TV series or a movie is that you're watching what came out of someone else's imagination. When I read you a book, your own imagination is drawing the pictures and showing you what is happening. And it's the magic of reading, and I love it. And I think it's wonderful that we can actually have an imagination where we take these little squiggly marks on the page, and what an author has written what they were imagining when they were writing it. It may not look the same as what it draws in our head, but we still get the same overall feel and sense of direction with where a story's going because of those marks that we can each share in that experience, even though it's not going to come across exactly the same for each one of us. So I think that's a wonderful thing. It's part of the magic of reading, and I think it's great. I think it's also really good that we do read books from other times and places because it helps us to realize that not everything that we're living with now is that is currently normal has always been normal. So um, I grew up in the 60s, 70s, those sort of era. Things were quite different then when I was growing up to what they were when my own children were growing up in the 90s and 2000s. Just because the world has changed a lot. So there are some things that my children have experienced because of the way we brought them up and where we lived and the sort of, because we used to go, not camping, we'd go out on the boat. It was an old family boat that was built within the family, and so therefore that was how we could afford to have a boat. But as we would go out with the kids on the boat, and it would mean that they could have this wonderful adventurous experience, but it also meant that you learnt that things weren't always comfortable. When the weather's not good, the weather's not good. You can do nothing about it. And it's not like you can stomp upstairs to your bedroom and slam the door and ignore everybody because you're in this tiny little space that's smaller than a normal um, New Zealand or English caravan, not like an American single or double wide mobile home type thing. This is actually a little trailer thing that's a closed in box. That's where you what you take behind the car to go camping in. That's what I mean by caravan. And so that sort of space, but instead of being with upright walls and regular angles, because it's a boat, there's curves everywhere, and you can't stand up too hard because otherwise you'll hit your head on the ceiling and all this sort of stuff. So you learn that life is uncomfortable and there's nothing you can do about it. And you can't go away somewhere else and get yourself some privacy if the weather's bad, because all you've got is the cabin up the front of the boat and you can hear everything because there's no doors. It's just a corner to give you some privacy and a curtain. So you just have to pretend that the others aren't there. So you actually learn a lot more about yourself and about accepting that things aren't always the way you want them to be. Temper tantrums aren't going to change the world, they're not going to change the weather. If you need to let off some steam, you go out for a row, even if the weather's bad, or you go swimming in the sea, that sort of thing. And it gives you a whole other view of how the world functions, that you can't bend the world to your wants. You need to comply with how it's actually working in real life. Um, you need to contribute too, because often on a small boat, you can't get anywhere unless you're all working together on it. Not really. So, all that sort of stuff. And it just means that there's a lot more that is part of life that you value that you otherwise wouldn't if you hadn't had those experiences. Anyone who has spent their growing up years going camping in a tent out in the wilds anywhere will probably have some of those similar things that have built into themselves, which in some ways come across as very old fashioned because you learn to be a lot more self reliant, but also um, working together on things if you're camping with other people. Not where you've got all the bells and whistles and the fridges and the chairs and that sort of thing. I'm talking about a little tent which you can fit one or two people in, and you have to carry it on your back, along with all your food, your water, everything else. And if you don't get the tent up properly and it rains, you're going to get washed out, all that sort of stuff. And so there's a lot of those things that you learn about yourself. What makes you grumpy? How often you need to eat to survive, which is quite different to how often you need to eat to stop yourself being bored. That you can actually eat things that are not your favourite food, which is a very important one to learn as a child. Often children go, oh, yuck, I don't eat that, or I can't eat that. And what they actually mean is it's not my favourite food. They haven't yet learned that you can eat things that aren't your favourite food. It's not necessarily a horrible thing, it's just not their favourite food. And that is part of what you learn if you do have all these sort of experiences. So people who have had that aspect to their youth, their childhood, often connect more easily to these old stories because things in some ways were simpler. Uh, in other ways, they were more complex. And in other ways, there's some things that they had to put up with that we have no idea what it's like. Having gas lighting in houses where you have gas pipes in the walls with a little gas tap, and you have a mantle, which is a little special type of uh, treated knitted cloth that is fitted on the top of the gas outlet, and then it is charred in a certain way, and you don't touch it, you don't bump it, because otherwise it'll shatter. And then there's a little frosted glass globe that sits around it, with still has air able to go in and out the top and the bottom, but that will shine and spread the light out from when you light that gas flame, which then heats up the mantle, which is that charred thing that I was talking about, and that glows quite brightly, and then that makes the frosted glass glow and provide light. Now, living in a house that has that sort of lighting, there's always a little bit of a smell of gas. It's not that great. And there's also the exhaust from the burning gas, which means that the quality of the oxygen you're breathing isn't as good. But it was wonderful because you didn't have to carry around all these lanterns or lamps that had fuel oil in them, and they smelled and all this sort of stuff, and could be knocked over. But also, if those gas lamps got blown out, not turned off, the gas could keep running, and you could have actually the house fill up with gas, or the room. Dangerous, very dangerous. We don't have to worry about that sort of thing generally. So there's all these things, and we come across bits and pieces like this in the stories, and sometimes that's quite good for us to actually realize that life is quite different now than it was then. We think it's hard, but in a lot of ways it's a lot easier. So that's part of why I read. There's lots of other reasons, and this is usually the part that I rant more about anything than any other section, is where I talk about why I read. So I don't need to tell you any more about why I read. That's just it. Sorry. Not an early reader specifically, but an avid reader once I did learn to read. I was just discussing it with a bunch of other people earlier on today. I got through third form science by having a book on my lap underneath the desk and reading that while I was pretending to write notes in my exercise book on the desk at the same time when the teacher was dictating. Yeah, probably not great for scientific education, but it certainly made it a lot more interesting for me because I was able to keep my mind occupied. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, reading, good stuff. Helps us to learn and appreciate other people. So I do have 3 tips. If you're a new person to the channel, the 3 tips are drinks, snacks, and comfort. So drinks, make sure you have water handy. If you don't have it, then as soon as I've told you why, go off and get yourself a drink of water, because you need to keep your brain and your body working. So I wave this one at you because it's got a nice watertight lid, and I love the colour of it. Goes well with lots of things that I've got. But I don't actually drink from it these days because it tips over too easily. It's too skinny. But I still like it. I usually actually drink from something else which is downstairs. So today I'm going to be drinking from my other water bottle, which is a little bit more stable, but it's a bit squeakier on the lid. I'm just going to have a mouthful of water now while I remember. Whoop. Water just under the lid, dribbling all over me. But along with water as a drink, if you can, have a favourite drink handy, or a drink that you like. So today I have got in here some cold black coffee. Cold only because I didn't finish it, but it's still yummy because it's black, so it doesn't go scungy. I'm still looking after my stomach a bit. For those who have been aware of the fact that I didn't read on Monday because I was having intestinal pain issues, and I have no idea why. No, they were not women's problems, so don't even bother asking. It's a waste of time. Drinks, water, and I've got coffee. Snacks, tip number 2. What have you got for snacks today? Type it in the chat. Sorry, type it type it in the chat. I should know, I always get that right. So what have I got today? I have here some white chocolate. I don't actually like normal chocolate much anymore. I don't know why, maybe I had too much of it when I was younger. So this is Voyage brand, which I think is done for the warehouse, and it might be a generic buy-in. White chocolate from the warehouse, which is like a department store, but it's very simple and basic. A little bit like the way Costco has pallet racks and things like that in some parts of it. The warehouse is set up like that, so it's not fancy. It's got concrete floors. It's got these racks that are like industrial storage racks and things like that. And they get things made, but they also buy in things from overseas. So this white chocolate is called Helsinki White Dreams. The milk chocolate had a different city on it, and then so did the dark chocolate. So I will possibly have some of that if I remember to a little bit later on. Very yum. It's one of the nicer, cheap white chocolates. Often they're too sweet. That one's not too bad. It's a little bit grittier, which means that the sugar hasn't been dissolved quite as much, but it's pretty good, actually. So, drinks, snacks. I also have my plain crackers if I really need to. So, drinks and snacks, that's good. Comfort. So, if you are working or studying and you are using my voice to keep your other part of your brain occupied, that's fine, I understand. I don't have a problem with this. This is not school. I will not be testing you on what I've talked about. But my reminder to you is if you are not doing any of those things, and this is purely for your entertainment, find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit, lie, whatever, to be. So this is my reminder for me that it's good to get comfortable when you're reading, because then you can just enjoy it more without feeling like you have to get up and go away and do something else. Because I have this overstuffed cushion here, it's got a rattly surface, but it's also got like a felted, velveteen flocked surface for the pattern, and it's quite cute. I don't know why I need to explain that part of it. Anyway, comfort. Get yourself somewhere comfortable. Drink, snacks, and comfort, Yeah, I should really do an emote for that, and I wrote that down last time, but I haven't done anything about it yet. I need to make some more. Photo emotes, those are the ones I do for myself because I'm no good at drawing on a computer. I'm no good at drawing. And if you think it would be great to have some other emotes and you think of a particular style of emote, not style, things that you think would be good to have emotes of, go to the Discord server and write a note in the general chat section. The other things that happen on the Discord server is that there are sections that are supposedly for each of the books that we read or series that we read. And if the book has illustrations, I sometimes manage to remember to put the illustrations for those books in those channels. But it's not just for me to put the illustrations there. It's for if you have any discussion to do with that book, whether it's memories you have from the places associated with it or the plants that they talk about, because often they talk about plants. We often end up looking up plants to find out what they are. Mangle Wurzel to you too. But if you've got memories of anywhere, if you want to see where somewhere is and I haven't looked it up on the map for you, go and find it on the map. If it's a real place or if it's an imaginary place that was based at a real place, go and find that on a map. Take a screen capture or something like that and then post it in those channels. I'm pretty sure you can post images over there. I've tried to get it set up so you can. That sort of stuff. So that's part of what it's about. And also there's even a section over on Discord for if you're trying to track down what a word means, ask over there. And we'll see if we can find out what it means between us. Because often, yes, the internet's a wonderfully big place with lots of resources, but sometimes when you are looking for something, you will use different words to look for it than what I will use. And you will look in different places to what I will. And so it just means that we can actually spread our skills out a little bit more and find out more for you where it's appropriate. Now, one of the things that people on YouTube are missing out on is that at some stage very soon I'm going to put a jigsaw puzzle up there for you, and the people on Twitch will be able to partake of that jigsaw puzzle. And why am I telling you that? Because I'm just about to put the jigsaw puzzle up there. When I find the right notepad thing, I feel like there's some here that we haven't done. I've got some links set up, as in I've copied them for images that I've got, that I've thought about. That was the previous one. Don't try and do it yet anyway. Change this. Yes, we did the elves' houses last time. They were cool, very cool. I'll just see if it'll let me show you this. No, not that bit. I'll show you when I'll do this. This is what they actually looked like. See? The elves' houses. And there are a certain style of old houses in Iceland that do actually look like this, where they've got turf on the roof and stone walls, and then just the front of the house is done with timber and bright paint. And it makes a lot of sense when you realise that they didn't have a lot of timber to be able to build houses with. One aspect of the fact that they didn't have a lot of timber to be able to build houses with is that 108 pieces. I'm just wondering if there's enough variation in that. I'll go with slightly more pieces. Let's go for 117 for now. Not hugely different. I think you can see the pieces well enough for there. That's cool. Get the game link. So shipwrecks. There were a lot of shipwrecks, not necessarily from Icelandic ships, but from other ships that were going and fishing and whaling in the area around Iceland, because the whole of that area was known for having whales. At one stage, the Icelandic people actually did require, in fact, they still have permission, they have given themselves permission, but also they've got permission from outside to harvest a certain number of whales per year, and it's more than most other countries because they don't have quite the same range of other things that they can access for food purposes that other places do. I don't actually have a problem with them doing that as long as it's reasonable, not excessive, and they're not preying on particularly vulnerable whales where the numbers are too low. As a society that has been dependent on the environment around them as much as they are, they're probably less likely to do stupid stuff than some of the other places I know of. Anyway, so there you go. If you want to do that jigsaw puzzle that I've just put up there for you, you on Twitch. If you're on YouTube, come over and see us on Twitch and I'll show you what the link is again. Here is my Twitch link. If you're over on YouTube, come over here and you can join us, and you can do, I'll just get my hair out of the way so you can see it against the black of my clothing, and you can come and join us and even do the jigsaw puzzle while I'm reading. It's a good way to keep your hands and your eyes busy if you are needing to, because some of us do need to. And I didn't tell you in my intro, I have ADHD and also autism spectrum disorder. Well, it's actually not really a disorder. It's a different way of thinking. Your brain functions differently, and there are some wonderful benefits to it. There can be some difficulties, especially having to fit into a world that says you have to be like them. But if you are able to be yourself and you have a good support bunch around you, people who let you be yourself and don't have to control everything that you do and tell you how you should behave and all that sort of stuff, it can be wonderful. I've got a great bunch of friends who are neurodiverse, which doesn't specifically mean autistic. It means that there's a range of different ways of processing things and responding to things that are all factors in the way we think and live and are. Right, I think that's enough chatter. How about we get on with reading? So jigsaw puzzle's ready. The link for that is ready. If you want to do the jigsaw puzzle, I shall give you this. I shall put a command into the chat for those who are late arrivers that says a little bit about what we do. Well, the fact that in theory I chat between chapters. I don't think there's anything else I need to say, is there? Before I read? Don't think so, no. Good on you, Blue, that's the way. Right, so we are reading A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. Oh, I see the name and I keep going to say Brazil, even though I know it's Brazil. So, A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. Chapter 3, The Black Puppy. His eyes so brown, his winning ways, his faithful heart command our praise. I don't know what that's from, but it's a poem. I'm guessing it's relevant to the story in some way. After the adventure at the mill wheel, somebody was climbing up it to go birdsegging, and the mill wheel started turning and they got thrown into the mill pond. They could have been drowned, blah, blah, blah. That was how we basically ended up the last chapter. After the adventure at the mill wheel, Aunt Helen judged wisely that Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do. That was an oft-quoted verse or maxim of some sort. I don't actually know which one it is. Maybe I ought to. Judging wisely that sent the children into the fields with Lillian to gather cowslips to make cowslip beer. Now, cowslip is a type of flower. It is a field flower, cowslip. And I am typing very noisily over here because the idea is to show you what these things look like. Because these, if you're like me, who live in a country that is not England, which is probably most of you, you won't necessarily know what some of these plants are. Which is a good picture. To help you see what the flowers are like, but also kind of see what the plants are like. They're yellow. They're a soft yellow, sometimes a brighter yellow. They are not the same as... There's a yellow one that I was thinking of and I can't remember what they are. Not the same as primroses. I wonder if they're related to primroses. This picture will do. Save the picture. When I get the right place to save it, right? Terrible Tomboy, that's where we want it. And we shall find pictures. This one here. This one here. And turn it on. Now, you may or may not have seen these sort of flowers before. They do look like a little bit like primrose flowers, except that the stem comes up and then there's a cluster of these flowers on the top. And then they have leaves that are a little bit like primrose leaves. And it's like a little rosette of leaves on the... like a little circle of leaves all spreading out across the ground, and then the flowers come up in the centre. These are cowslips. There's another one which is meant to be I think probably a bigger, more robust version of them, which at one stage didn't used to be as common, and that's called an oxlip. This looks like the same, except I don't know why they think it's different. I think the oxlip also has a narrower throat out to the flower. These ones might be those, I don't know. But there were meant to be differences, because I know there were books I used to read that would talk about one and then talk about the other, as if finding a particular one. Obviously in their part of the country they didn't have lots of whichever sort it was. I think it was the oxlip. And so therefore it's like, oh, I found some, and taking them home with them. It was just a common thing to do, you know, you take pictures home with you. Right, carrying on. So, cowslip beer. That one we need to find out about too. I can see this is going to be a long research session today. So let's find out what cowslip beer is. No, Google, I did not mean cowslip bill. I went cowslip beer. It might be the equivalent of what has been called cowslip wine. Cowslip wine. There you go. I would think that that's probably what it is. Hi, Squibble. Great to have you here. I'm just going to give anyone else who hasn't been here before a shout out for Squibble. That's all right. That's all right. I mean, it was one word. It wasn't a great big long wall of text. So don't worry about it. We're only just getting going. And halfway through the first paragraph, and we're already researching things. It's the second or third thing I've looked up. No, don't do that. Thank you. Nope, not that one then. Let's find another. Cowslip wine. Sorry, I'm just skimming it because otherwise I just go blah, blah, blah at you. Flowers were used in most wines and drinks. Basically, if they thought it could turn into a drink, they would. Anything that you could find growing around the place, if it could add to a drink that you were making, you put it in. Sloe gin. Sloes are the berries from a particular tree or shrub. SLOE. Elderflower wine. No, elderflower cordial. Elderberry wine, both from the same tree, the flowers and the berries. All sorts of things. Because each of these different plants has their own unique aspects that they bring to the flavours of stuff. Fruity smelling spring flower went into decline around the 30s and sprang back into grasslands in the 80s due to picking and rapid growth of advance of modern farming. I don't know how that affected it, but still. It's made a comeback and returned to unsprayed areas, village greens and banks with the help of scattering wildflower seed mixes. So cowslip wine, which I'm thinking is what they refer to here as cowslip beer, is cowslip flowers, water, sugar, and yeast. Yeah, actually that could be construed as a cowslip wine, a cowslip beer. It's not too unusual for that sort of thing to be put into a drinkable format. You put the things together. Sometimes you heat them for a certain amount of time. Sometimes you just mash them all up together, and then you let them sit and sit and sit, and they will ferment. And once they have fermented, they're not going to go off so readily. And you can have something that can be quite refreshing, sometimes can be quite alcoholic, depends on how much yeast and sugar is in it. Sometimes quite yummy, and sometimes sort of a little bit of an acquired taste, which used to be adult speak for you won't like it, it's nasty, but if you drink it often enough, you'll decide that you'll pretend to be an adult and like it. Why is it that we adults do that? I don't know. Anyway, I think that's it all I had to say about that. Let's get on with more than the first paragraph. You're most welcome for the shout out, Squibble. So those of you who don't know Squibble, she does wonderful artwork. And I don't know if that they're all illustrations for specific things, but they are beautiful. She often works with ultra fine brushes. Not everything is with an ultra fine brush, but the level of detail on them is wonderful. And they're just fascinating. There's the rosy moths, blush moths, which she's been working on recently. There's been illustrations for the Wizard of Oz, all sorts of things. And yeah, my memory is terrible, so I don't always get the details right on things, but you know what I mean, that sort of stuff. Anyway, rosy maple moths, that's it. I knew there was something else missing, so I got the rosy bit. Right, let's carry on with reading. And by the way, if you're wondering, this is meant to be a unicorn's horn and a unicorn, I don't know, tail or something like this. for a hair clip for little girls at the warehouse. And so, of course, I've got it because it was really cheap and it was cute. And I thought it would make fun. And I used it once for Dr. Dolittle when we were doing the unicorn and the push me pull you, which is unicorn and gazelle combined, two-headed animal. One end has two horns and the other end has one horn. But I haven't used it again since. And somebody today was saying, "Oh, that's really cool," because I was waving it around, talking about how ridiculous I am when I'm streaming, which is only a little bit more ridiculous than what I am in real life, unless you're in my family, and then you'll know it's actually probably a bit toned down, actually. And they said, "Oh, wear it today when you're reading." So there you go. That's for you, Annie. She probably isn't going to be watching this at the moment, but she may do later on, either on YouTube or as a recording later on Twitch. So we'll carry on with the story. I'm going to read the whole of this sentence again, this paragraph again, because we need to get beyond the first paragraph of the chapter and actually find out what happens, since the chapter is called The Black Puppy. After the adventure at the mill wheel, Aunt Helen judged wisely that Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do, and sent the children into the fields with Lillian, that's the housemaid, housekeeper, something, to gather cowslips to make cowslip beer, hence the rabbit trail. It was pleasant work wandering among the green meadows, picking the sweet-smelling flowers while the larks sang. We would call them skylarks. There's other sorts of larks too. While the larks sang their loudest overhead, and the little brook babbled by on its path to the river, more especially pleasant when they remembered that by this time next week school would have begun again. Yes, aren't school holidays so much more delicious when you know that they are finishing soon? When you've got the whole holidays ahead of you, you feel like you're going to enjoy them. And it's sort of like, it's this ethereal, nebulous thing that just sort of carries on. And then when it's like, next week we're back at school, it's like, make the most of every moment. It just tastes better. Anyway, carrying on. That next week school would have begun again with its attendant woes of Latin grammar. Glad we don't do that now. And French composition. I never did languages because I can't remember things. Doesn't help. If I understand how about something, I can usually remember a bit about it, but I can't actually remember specific lumps of information in that way. If it's random information that I found interesting, I'll remember it. If it's just a whole bunch of words, no. See them written down, and once I understand how they're meant to be pronounced, certain letters go together, I can probably pronounce it reasonably accurately, even if I haven't a clue what I'm saying. I've done that before. We were traveling in the Netherlands. My husband doesn't read Dutch, but he speaks Dutch because he learnt it when he was a toddler from his parents. That was the first language at home. He learned English when he started going to school, but he didn't learn to read Dutch. But I had been told a few things about how certain letters work together for pronunciation, and I had got used to the sounds that were part of the way the Dutch language works. And so we were driving through the Netherlands, and I was having to read instructions about something, so I would sound it out to him, and he would listen to the sounds I was saying. Occasionally he'd correct something, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, that's so-and-so." But if I put the page in front of him and he looked at the words, he would have just gone, "What the hang is that?" It needed me to sound it out and then him to hear it for us to know what was going on. But yeah, no, I can't remember words when I'm for learning languages. I've never been able to. So Latin and French would have been no good for me. "I'm sure we must have enough now," said Lillian, turning out her 16th basket of blossoms. That's a lot of flowers. Into the ever-increasing pile in the bakehouse. "I'm almost tired of gathering them. I shall see nothing but cowslips when I shut my eyes in bed tonight." "It will take a fearfully long time to pick them all," remarked Peggy, starting bravely to work on her task of pulling the yellow pips away from the green calices. So, CalYces. So I'm going to bring you back that picture again, or see if I can explain it better. So the yellow pip will be the ring of yellow petals here, and then this is the callus, this green tube here, that is what supports it. So they want the yellow bit, not the green bit, because the yellow bit is where the fragrance and the flavour will be. Sorry. Still slightly rattly voice. I'm not sure why. More coffee. It'll take a fearfully long time to pick them all, remarked Peggy, because they're picking them each off the clusters, starting bravely to work on her task of pulling the yellow pips away from the green calluses. It seems almost a shame to put them into a barrel. They look so pretty. You won't say so when you come to taste it, said unromantic Bobby, who was fond of cool, fizzy drinks in summer. So it would be ever so slightly fermented, but not finishing the ferment if it's going to be slightly fizzy. And it's probably why it's also called beer in this context. Be that you, miss, said a voice from the region of the door, and the good-natured freckled face and sandy hair of Joe, the farm boy, made its appearance, followed by the rest of his lanky person as he entered slowly, bearing something mysteriously concealed under his coat. Whatever have you got there, Joe? Cried three voices at once. Well, replied Joe with an important air, it do be a present for Miss Peggy, it be. She were that disappointed about the guinea pig as Mrs. Davenport promised to give her, and I forgot all about that I says to myself, I must make it up to her some ways if I gets the chance, and I have no idea why we have this accent, but we have. Probably because of two words in the first sentence, he said, the way they were written. So I walks over to my granny's at Marlow last night, and I begs a black pup off her, and here it is. And for some reason, I think it's slightly Somerset. I don't know. But the story is set in the Welsh borderlands. Welsh borders. I don't know what the accent is there for the rural people. Anyway, and I begs a black pup off her, and here it is. Joe drew aside his jacket and disclosed to the children's delighted eyes the sweetest little round, fuzzy ball of black fluff, just like a tiny woolly bear, with tan chest and paws and a wagging morsel of a tail like a black tassel. So cute. I have the feeling that this is sort of little puppy that Squibble might have done an illustration of at some stage just because it appealed. It has that sort of niceness, cuteness about it. It had the brightest of brown eyes, the pinkest of tongues, and the shrillest of barks, and it was altogether such a dear, enchanting, soft, curly morsel of puppyhood that Peggy took it to her arms and her heart at the same moment. Yes, look. Very good, thank you, Squibble. Perfect use of emote. Oh, thank you, Joe, she exclaimed, almost too pleased to speak. Personally, I would have rathered the puppy than the guinea pig because I've only ever been bitten by guinea pigs. They like me too much, apparently. Apparently, they only bite people that they find yummy, and I'm one of them. I've never had an experience with a guinea pig where I wasn't bitten, and I had friends who had them. Granny has 5 of him, miss, said Joe, but I picked out the best. It'll make a grand dog. It will when it's growed, and Master was saying only the other day as he could do with another collie to train in old Rover's place. Oh, so it's a collie. It's a black and tan collie by the sound of it, with a fluffy tail. Yeah, because some of them, the collie dogs, have a fluffier tail than other ones. Let me have him a moment, begged Bobby, hugging the wriggling burden, which Peggy unwillingly relinquished. Somebody can go looking for a black and tan collie dog puppy photograph on Google image search, please, and we'll see what we can come up with. And if it's from the right sort of source, we can make a jigsaw puzzle of it. Let me have him a moment, begged Bobby, hugging the wriggling burden, which Peggy unwillingly relinquished. What shall you call the darling? Inquired Lillian, kissing the funny black nose that was smelling at her buttons. I think Rollo would be a jolly name, and of course we can all have a piece of him all the same, though he's mine, announced Peggy magnanimously, for the Vaughans always shared their good things with one another. They had a perfect menagerie of pets at the Abbey. First there were the rabbits, 5 white ones and 2 black, which lived in a little hutch behind the stable yard. They did not do very much except nibble at bran and lettuce leaves, it is true, but they were pretty, soft creatures with long, silky ears, and it was fun sometimes to let them out for a scamper on the granary floor. Then there was Prickles, a bright little hedgehog, which Peggy had rescued from some village boys who were using the poor little fellow as a football. She had brought him home and fed him on bread and milk, because that was the done thing. These days you use cat food. Bread and milk, and he soon got to know her and would come when she called him and allow her to scratch the end of his funny pink nose. Prickles generally slept most of the day in a snug box lined with hay, but in the evenings he woke up and Peggy would carry him into the kitchen where he devoured black beetles, much to his own delight and Nancy's satisfaction. I think Nancy is the cook. Oh, are you able to post a link into the chat? See if it will let you. Otherwise, over in the general chat on Discord, but I'm pretty sure that the Twitch chat is more likely to let you. Oh, that sounds good. Thank you. Oh, that's cute. That's exactly the sort of dog. Now, this one is a little bit older, which is probably going to happen through the story. But I'm going to see. Sorry, I am going to take a few minutes and I'm just going to set this up so that we can do this as a jigsaw puzzle once this current puzzle is finished, which is going to be soon, which is why I'm trying to do this now. Create a custom puzzle. There you go. This is what we do. We go to the page on Jigsaw Explorer and we enter the URL that we just copied from the image. Then we, if we want to, we add some extra information, which I'd like to do if I can. And that's the main reason why this you're hearing me clacking and not reading is just because I'm wanting to get this available so it's ready. And we'll give that a dark background and then create the jigsaw puzzle and then copy the link. I'm ready to go. So I've now got a link for the dog. I shall put the link where I can not worry about forgetting it. There. Wonderful. So nearly there on the puzzle. And then I'll do the dog one. I can't give you the other link until this one's finished because I have to paste it into my information in OBS and then that gives me the interaction thing where I get another puzzle link, which is the one which you guys can use, and then I put that into my command so you can pick it up. Right, we'll carry on. So where he devoured the black beetles much to his own delight and Nancy's satisfaction, because black beetles can be a bit of a nuisance in a house. Thank you for the link too, Squiggle. That's cool. Jack the magpie had fallen from his nest in the fir tree when still an ugly little half-fledged creature with a wide gaping mouth. This is talking about the children's menagerie. So magpies, when they are half-grown, when they haven't got all their feathers, do look rather ugly and scrawny, and they've got that weird sort of skin look to them where the skin is semi-trans. It's just like a little bit... Anyway, collection of childhood treasures on a trunk. And I don't remember if we actually did that one earlier in the jigsaw season or not. Well done, well done. So we'll do this one, get this one set up now, and then we'll get on with the rest of the... I'll give you the link in a moment. Copy link. Link copied. Pasted into my command box in the command center. It is saved and ready to go as soon as you want to do it. You don't have to, just if you want to. Right, scrolling back here to the pictures. Carrying on. So Jack the magpie had fallen from his nest in the fir tree when still an ugly little half-fledged creature with a wide gaping mouth. The children had made a nest of grass for him inside a basket and fed him on worms and scraps of raw meat until he was old enough to fly, when he would follow them everywhere about the farmyard and outbuildings, calling, "Jack, Jack," which, with the mewing of a cat, the gobble of the old turkey cock, which is like a rooster for chickens, and a close imitation of David's winter cough, made up the extent of his accomplishments. So the magpie had learnt those sounds and made those sounds. Nancy kept him sternly out of the kitchen, for he was terribly mischievous and seemed to take a positive delight in playing practical jokes. Yes, because magpies are very, very clever and also very observant. I think that's how they can learn words and how to use them appropriately. Remind me to tell you the magpie story, Magpie and the Dog story. Maybe in the chapter break. We'll see how we go. But please remind me. It's quite amusing. He had purloined David's scarf from the saddle room and dropped it into the horse trough. He had filled Bobby's hat with pebbles and devoured the queen cakes which Lillian had placed on the kitchen windowsill to cool. He had snatched Joe's breastpin, a glittering imitation diamond, from his Sunday tie. We would now call it a tie pin, under the very nose of that injured youth, and had stolen so many small articles that if anything were missing, the children would have a grand search of Master Jack's hiding place. Yep, that makes sense. And would generally turn out the lost treasure from among an odd collection of trifles, scraps of bright-coloured rags, bits of broken glass, hairpins, pen nibs, pencil ends, together with pieces of bread and half-picked bones which the thief had concealed in some cunning corner inside a manger or under the roof of the loft. Oh my goodness, this would be rather a nuisance. It definitely would be a nuisance at times. Also, you might discover some interesting things there that you weren't expecting to, that he might have pinched from somewhere else. Then there was Pixie, the pony, who would come whinnying up from the further side of the field to poke her soft nose into the children's pockets for pieces of bread or lumps of sugar. There were numerous cats. There were carts who lived in the barn, I'm sure, too, but they may not have been named or make their own special affectionate noises when the children approach, being a two or a four-wheeled vehicle. There were numerous cats who lived in the barns and stables, and Tabbyskins, the stately grey Persian, who usually sat sunning herself on the pigsty wall, keeping a strict eye on naughty Jack, who was wont to harry her or harass her if he got the chance. Older English usage. Bobby had a pretty set of bantams. Bantams are like miniature hens. Now, I just need to give you some background here because this is something I know a little bit about. Not a lot, but a little bit. Bantams look like normal hens, chickens, but they are smaller than normal. So a normal hen, the body is often about this big. A bit bigger than my head, often, depending on the breed. But a bantam will often be about this big. So about this big. The reason I'm putting my face close to my hands is because when I have my hands close, see the scale, my hands are not actually changing size, and yet what it looks like depends on how far from the camera it is. So a bantam is often about half the size of a full-size hen, maybe even less. Now some bantams are a naturally occurring breed. They have always been small. They were not created by breeding them specifically to make a small version of a large breed. So with chickens, they're not just chickens. It's not like random birds. It's like, except that they're not different species, they're different varieties. It's like with dogs, you have pugs, and you have corgis, and you have Alsatians, and you have um, spaniels, and you have all these different things. Well, chickens have a lot of varieties too. So you have Australorps, and you have Leghorns, and you have Wyandottes, and you have brown shavers, and you have, these are just the ones I'm trying to remember. You have all these other things. There's lots of different varieties. You have silkies, which are not to do with the colour, it's the type of feathering that they have. And it's a little bit like kiwi feathers, where they are kind of fluffy looking instead of smooth. They're not soft feathers, but they look fuzzy or fluffy. But usually each feather is all one colour, whereas a kiwi feather, I think there's lots of different shades in each feather, which is why they have this distinctive look. Silkies are amazing, and they have, unusually for hens, they have a different colour skin underneath the feathers to what you expect, even bright white ones. Bright white silkies are quite common in New Zealand if you're going to have silkies. They will usually have black skin. Most other chickens have yellowy pink skin. And then the red bits you see on a chicken, on their cheeks, sometimes under here and sometimes on top of their head, their comb and their wattles, the bits that hang down, but also the flat bit here, just in front of where their ears are, which are just a hole. Usually that will indicate what sort of colour you're going to get from the eggs. So the ones with the red cheeks will usually have a white or a brown egg. The ones that have the blue cheeks, it's a whitish blue, like silkies often can have, not always. Australorps, I think, are the ones that tend to have blue cheeks. They will have a pale blue or a pale green egg, a little bit like I think it's a starling's egg is a type of blue, and there are some other ones. And so we used to have some bantams that were a cross of a bantam Australorp and something or other else. We don't know what, it was just a random mix. And so because of that, we had these eggs that we used to get from them, from the range of bantam chickens we had, where some of them laid brown eggs, some of them laid eggs that looked pink. They were actually a very soft buff colour. And then some of them laid blue eggs or green eggs, and it was the same chicken, but sometimes it was more blue and sometimes more green. So you had almost like a little rainbow of egg colours. The inside's all the same. It's just eggs. You can't tell. It's just the colour of the shells. Silkies are wonderful nest mothers. They are wonderful mothers of their chicks. They look after them very well, and the way they get on with the roosters and the hens, they look after them together. The only other one that's as good as that, as fiercely good as that, is the pekin or cochin is the other name for it. And they're another one that's commonly a bantam. And they are little round ones, and their feathers are soft, but the roosters, instead of having a tail that pokes up, it's more rounded because the spine of the feather is quite soft, and so it just flips over a little bit. And so when people see the rooster of that style of chicken, the pekin or the cochin, people will often think it's a hen, when in actual fact it's a rooster. The hens have less of a lump of feathers at the back. I'll see if I can find a picture. Yes. And somehow or other they seem to be a lot softer than a standard chicken. The feathers, I think it's something to do with the way, like I say, the spine of the feather is not as strong. I'll save this and then I'll show it to you. Right. That one, find the link. Here they are. And this, yeah, that's the one I want. That there is a cochin, and they have fluffy feet. So the feathers, come back here. Don't be silly. My image thing is being weird. Yeah. It's doing it again. Come back. I think it's proximity to something, and it's wanting to, Yeah, these are fluffy feet. Silkies have fluffy feet too. I think it's actually proximity to things and it's trying to ping to it. Let's see if I can do it that way. That's better. So there you go. See, they're very round. And these feathers here, on a normal rooster, the feathers would come up to about here. They would poke up and then hang over. Whereas on a pekin or a cochin, they do this little wee, they come up and then they go down again. So that's a rooster. That is not a hen. The hen feathers are, they probably stop about at that point there, halfway up that height. Just because they do. And they're so soft and fluffy underneath. Just these soft, soft feathers. Anyway, they're so cute. Sorry about that. A mutual on, so Q's saying, a mutual on Twitter has a bunch of silkies and I get photos on Twitter often. Very cute. I'm going to have to check out that friend of yours with the chickens. I love them. I do. We don't have chickens anymore, but we had bantams just because this random one was running around in the park next to us and was being chased by a dog, so we rescued it. And we thought it was a hen. And then it started crowing. So we weren't going to get any eggs from it. And then somebody else, oh, that's wonderful. Yes, please do DM a link. Somebody else actually said, here, you can have a loan of our hen. And it's the one that was the blue egg layer. And then we had these other chicks from them that they raised. And so we had these multicolored eggs, but we had these wonderful chickens all just sort of running around doing their own thing. So bantams can be like dogs. They can, like dogs have varieties, hens have varieties, which I've talked about. And what that means is that because a lot of the chickens are bred as large breeds, because a lot of chickens used to be used purely for meat, not necessarily for eggs, or multi-purpose where they lay eggs, maybe not quite as much, but they also produce a decent amount of meat. So when you've had enough of them, when they're getting old enough or not laying enough, you get some useful meat out of them. So modern chickens that are raised for laying eggs, there's not very much meat on them because they've been bred so strongly just to lay eggs that they don't put any of their body's energy into growing decent sized and strength muscles. That's just the way it is. So one of the things that happened over the years is there were people who started showing them at fairs and things like this. There were competitions. People did this with canaries as well. And bantams became very popular. And so there were groups of people who were chicken enthusiasts. And one of the things they would do is they would actually work on breeding a smaller and a smaller and a smaller version of the particular style of chicken that they usually had. So if you had, what's a variety of chicken? Okay. Varieties of chicken. No, come on, give me some pictures. There's so many. Okay, let's think of one. That one looks familiar. I should know what it is. Sorry, I can't help it. My brain, I told you I've been really distracted today. So, that one doesn't give me a name on that first one. I found a page that talks about a whole lot of different ones. Australorps just look like a very white chicken with a rather elongated tail with a hanging over feathers right out at the very end. Bright red comb and stuff. So I'm describing the rooster, obviously. I'm looking for ones which are names that I am likely to recognise and possibly some of you are. There's a lot here that aren't. So cochins are the ones, like I said, with the fold over soft feathers. There's another cochin here. This is a classic rooster colour, not specific. The colouring is not specific to cochin because cochin have a wide range of colours, whereas most of the others it's a body shape, feather style, and a set of colours. Don't know, just is. And so what happens is you get Sorry, I'm leaning over to look above my thing here. There we go again with the weird, oh no, there we go. That's a bit better. So see, he's got fluffy feet. That's why these bits poke out. That's feathers on top of his feet. So he's got his feet on the ground like this, and then the feathers are growing from different points all the way down his feet. So the fluffy bits just poke out over the top, which would keep your feet warm, wouldn't they, when it's cold air around you. And he's got feathers all the way down his legs, whereas a lot of chickens, the body stops up here and then it's bare legs all the way down. And some of them look like, do you remember watching something like, I can't remember new versions, but old versions of the Olympics where you'd have a whole lot of the different African nations running and they were really tall people? Just because I'm remembering specific ones, that's why I'm mentioning this. So they were tall, and then they had these rather short running shorts, not rude or anything, and then you had these long legs. And so some chickens look like that, where they have these really long legs and then the body's way up here, like on stilts. There you go, there's the little puppy, very cute. This one, see how the feathers just sort of drop over this way, drop over. That's a typical one. But these are those blue-green shiny feathers, and so are these ones here. And then he's got these dark orange and bright orange and all this sort of stuff going on. Why did that jump around? Sorry. Anyway, the thing on my phone was just jumping around. I wonder if someone was trying to contact me for some reason. Yeah, someone did, and someone's not meant to be because all my family know that I'm doing this at this time of day. Dad knows, but he just sometimes forgets. So that's the cochin, also known as a pekin. I'm still looking. So Dorking is one that looks like a normal sort of a chicken or a rooster, but then has these creamy white feathers down over the head, down the neck, and across the top of the back, and then they start hanging down the side, and then he's black feathers coming out the back, like these feathers here, but they point out a little bit more, and then black feathers down the front. Dutch Bantam looks very neat and tidy and proper, with a very upright, pokey out tail, and they're sort of golden. I'm just describing these all to you. For some reason, Frizzle. Frizzle looks like a chicken that put its finger in the electric light socket. I think you need to see this one. I hope you think it's funny. This is just the way their feathers grow. It's actually a normal thing. Frizzle. There's the frizzle. See what I mean? That has not been played with. That is the way this chicken's feathers grow. They just go whoop. Just looks like I say, it looks like someone's poked their finger in the electric socket. That's what we used to say as kids and teenagers. Some of them have lots of feathers up on top. Silkies do, but they're the soft, thready feathers, and other ones have bigger, fluffy feathers on top. Japanese bantams have really long tails. I'm still not seeing any of the ones that I'm used to. These are all ones that are popular in Australia. Orpington. Black Orpingtons, buff Orpingtons, they are ones that look a little bit like a pekin or a cochin, but they're big chickens. I've got a friend over the road who has some, and they're big, cuddly, fluffy things. They look so just voluptuous, but in a chickeny way. And they've got these big, fluffy, soft bits around their butts. Yeah, they're silky. There's the silky. Here we go. Save. Yeah, and then we will get back to the thing in a moment. Sorry. Chickens are the ones we're doing today. Yeah, they are great pets. We had a wonderful time having chickens, and they were a very good way for our students. We had students who were going to secondary school who boarded with us and went to the local secondary school. You can see these have got very thready, thin, soft feathers. Quite possible. There are several reasons why they get banned in city centres, city urban areas. One of them is because people assume that there's going to be a lot of noise, because there can be. especially if you have roosters, but there are places that let you have chickens as long as you don't have a rooster. Unfortunately, some chickens will start to identify as a rooster if there is no rooster. If they have a strong flock sense, if their little family group, their flock, is very strong, you will often get a hen that starts behaving almost as a rooster. She will be very protective. She will be very aggressive to anything she thinks is dangerous. She will crow. I know because we had one that did it. I know that it was a hen who was doing it because we had no rooster and she used to lay eggs for us, and then she stopped laying eggs and crowing. She didn't become male, but she just started using male behavior. Matriarchal chicken, yeah, basically. The crowing, I think, is just a sort of a signal, and it's just usually associated with being the thing that roosters do because there's usually roosters around. Another aspect to do with chickens, which is why cities will often ban them, is because they leave a lot of poop around, and often because they're free range in an area, there will be food that's tossed out to them, and they'll scrabble around amongst dead plants and live plants and things like this. They're great for getting rid of bugs in the garden. But there can be a higher incidence of rats if there are chickens. And just because one person who has chickens and looks after them well doesn't mean the next person who has chickens who just wants to have free meat off them and doesn't really care about looking after them well. There's no guarantee that that person is actually going to house them well, um, make sure that they're not noisy, feed them properly, and make sure there are no rats. And cities get in trouble for having a build-up of rats near anything urban, and so that can often be a city being self-protective, just the way it goes, unfortunately. So that can be part of it. Sussex, that's the other one I was thinking of, kind of. Um, yes, I think especially in Auckland was the volcanic rock makes it really easy for rats to hang out. I have a vague memory of that being part of the bylaw years ago. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be, just sorry, I was reading Squibble's comment to you. That is definitely an aspect that was part of it for Auckland. Now, Auckland is a city that's built on a whole lot of volcanoes. I think it's about 52. I'm not sure. Some of them are flat at ground level volcanoes where you see from an aeroplane or an aerial photo where the crater was, the impact shape of the volcanic crater. Other ones are ones where it's like a lake where it's done the same thing, but it's had a hollow there, and then it's sealed itself and it's filled up with water. Some of them actually have sea comes into the side, and then others are these funny little bumpy hills that we have all over Auckland. But because of that, there's been a lot of lava flows and things. There's little tunnels and nooks and crannies through old lava fields and things like that, which are underneath the soil, which rats find their way through because the lava will flow, and as it cools down on the outside, the inner bit that's still hot will keep flowing and leave just that shell of lava around the outside that got cold while the inner bit carries on, and that just stays as a little tunnel. There are big ones that people can walk through, and then there are small ones which insects and animals can go through. So that wouldn't surprise me if that was part of it. So this one here is a Sussex. And see how it's got the black and white up here? That's because the feathers are black with a white rim on them. There are breeds that have like down to about here on them, where that sort of effect on the feathers is done like that. Some of it's like black and gold, or gold and orangey brown and whitish gold round the edge, and all sorts of things like this, or with a light colour in the middle and then a dark colour around the edge. And it's very, very striking. It's almost like looking at scales, but it's these feathers, these soft feathers. Wyandotte, laced Wyandotte, I suppose it is. Often called laced because of the effect. And this is exactly what I was looking for. And this is what I expected to see earlier in the list. And then we'll get on with the story because I got to the end of the page and I'm not finding another one. There you go. That's what I was talking about. Like the feathers have been drawn on with a felt tip pen. Would love to have a modified photo of a white chicken stuck with one of these, and a picture of someone's hand drawing the outlines of the feathers to make the transition between this to that would be amusing. Anyway, right. No more puzzles for you because otherwise I'm going to get super distracted. No more chickens either. We'll turn the chickens off. And we'll get back to the story. Sorry. Maybe I do have another puzzle. I'll just have a quick look to see if I have another link for a puzzle that's useful. So we did the puppy. I just need to mark it so I know. I think I've done all those. Don't know if I've done this one. We'll give it a try. I shouldn't blame you for the me chatting incessantly. It's getting more talk and less read. I'm so sorry. I will actually get more done. No, come back. That one. There. Come here. I won't make it any more complex because I don't want it to take too long for you because I'm going to be finishing shortly. We're only doing one chapter today. Sorry. I didn't know this. We'll get there. But like I say, it's been one of those days where my brain has just been so scatty, so interrupting itself all the time, and I don't even know why. It just is. That's the way it's been all day. So there you go. The puzzle link is active again. Do you need me to put a chicken back up for you, Hugh? I can put one up. Would you like the silky? I could put the chicken photo up until we get the actual other picture ready. Where's the silky? There you go. There's the silky. What colour is your friend? Are your friend's silkies? There you go. This is just to keep Hugh happy while I'm reading, and I'll try and sit over here a little bit. Yeah, silkies have these wonderfully fluffy feet too, but it's the same style of feathers as this. See how they've got this mop up on top? Some of our chickens used to have that because they were a cross between a silky and something else. And then these feathers on the feet. Some brown, some black, and mixed. Yeah, they really are wonderful. If I were to choose again, I would get a silky. I would get a cochin, Pekin cochin. They're supposedly the same, but in other places they're not. And I would also get a blue egg layer. Americana, I think it's called, not an Aracona. Right. Carrying on. Reading. Sorry, got to unlock the page. It's been that long since I actually read a little bit for you. Bobby had a pretty set of bantams. Oh, shall we find out about bantams, children? So the whole point of what I started off on there, and we went everywhere with it, was the fact that some bantam breeds are naturally occurring. They have only ever or started off as small chickens, these sort of like miniature things, and other ones were bred from large breeds down to small sizes. So all those ones I was showing you before, the reason I was showing them to you is because often those sort of chickens are also bred to be a small version. It's like having a miniature donkey or a miniature horse or whatever else, a toy poodle instead of a standard poodle. What we think of as a poodle these days is a toy poodle, and they're about that tall to the back. Sorry, bring it back here. They're about this tall from the floor up to the top of their shoulders. That's a toy poodle or a miniature poodle. I'm not sure which one it is. But an actual standard poodle, the back of it, its shoulders it comes up to almost hip height. They're a big dog, and they were a hunting dog. But that's actually a poodle compared with the little things. The little things were bred to be small just because they were going to be cute as lap dogs, that sort of thing. Anyway, Bobby had a pretty set of bantams whose small eggs afforded him much delight and some slight profit. for Aunt Helen bought them from him at threepence a dozen, a transaction which he always recorded in chalk upon the hen house door, the pennies being carefully put by towards the purchase of a pair of fantail pigeons. No, not going to talk about. We have a neighbour who used to have fantail pigeons. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to get into stories. Which was at present the summit of his ambition. There was something else I was going to tell you about before, though, and I told you that you were meant to remind me about. Oh no, and it's going to bug me. I'll have to see if I can. Oh, yes, I do remember. Magpie story. I'll have to tell you over on Discord or next time. Magpie story. And the only reason I am writing it down is because otherwise it is really going to torment me with there was something and I can't remember what. Okay. Now I can carry on. I can let it go. The purchase of a pair of fantail pigeons, which was at present the summit of his ambition. This spring, too, there was a pet lamb called Daisy. David had found it bleating beside its dead mother one bitter morning early in March, and had carried the poor orphan into the kitchen, where Nancy had reared it on a feeding bottle like a baby. It returned her care by an affection which was quite embarrassing to the worthy girl, for however attractive a pet lamb may be, it becomes distinctly in the way when it insists upon following you into the dining room with the dinner, or presses its attentions on you when you are engaged in cleaning the grate, or scrubbing the floors. They push up against you and they headbutt you with head. They headbutt you in the head because your head is down at their level. It's just them mum, 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 sort of thing. That's what lambs do. Even when they get half grown, they still do it. It was not only outside that the children had treasures. Aunt Helen was very long-suffering with respect to hobbies, for she rightly thought that the more a child's life is filled with interests, the more chance it has of growing up an intelligent and broad-minded individual. Yes, there you go. Follow your interests. It helps you to be a more well-rounded person. Good move. Sorry, still trying to find where I am. And of escaping from that lethargy of boredom which swallows up the lives of many young people who ought to know better how to amuse themselves in God's beautiful world. I don't know what to do was an unknown expression among the young Vaughans, who had always so many projects on hand that the difficulty lay in finding time to carry them all out. The rose parlour, as it was called, from the tangle of pink roses which framed the windows in summer-time, was especially given up to the children's use. It was a bright, cheerful room, with a view over the river to the sunset and the Welsh mountains, and had a French window which opened into the garden. Here was the old piano on which they practised, here the ink pots and rulers for their home lessons, with their paint boxes, crayons, and drawing books. A cupboard in the corner was devoted to a kind of museum where they kept their collection of birds' eggs, a few butterflies, moths and beetles, Lillian's pressed wild flowers, a box full of shells and fossils which they had brought home from their one never-to-be-forgotten visit to the seaside, because they lived in the middle of the country, a long way from the sea. A curious plaited basket filled with bone rings, shell bracelets, and other curiosities sent by a sailor cousin from the South Sea Islands. Now, the South Sea Islands, sorry, interrupting again, South Sea Islands usually means the South Pacific. Polynesia and Melanesia and Micronesia is Northern Pacific, but some of it comes down into the South Pacific. So it's places like Fiji and Samoa and Cook Islands and Tonga and the Marshall Islands, Gilbert's, that's somewhere in amongst those is Kiribati and Tuvalu, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, French Polynesia, which has Tahiti and Moorea and those sort of places. All that is the South Sea Islands, the tropical islands. That includes places, like I said, Tahiti, Papeete, places that famous authors and artists who decided that they were going to leave Europe and they settled in the South Sea Islands. It was these warm climates and people who lived very casual lives, but lived, it was hard work. You fish, if you have land mammals for food, you farm those a little bit. You kind of let them run a little bit wild and you feed them with fruit that grows easily nearby. You pick fruit, you grow vegetables in your gardens. What you can produce is what you live off. That's called subsistence farming. And that's the sort of thing that goes on commonly in the South Sea Islands. So this stuff has come from the other side of the world. I live in this other side of the world. So England is completely on the opposite side of the world from me. If you take a globe, and this is New Zealand on this side of the globe, this is England over here. Okay? Opposite side of the world, completely opposite. So for them to have this, it has come from the other side of the world. It would have seemed very exotic, especially to have stuff that was made out of these things like shells and plant woven stuff like out of pandanus and stuff like that, because they're just not normal for the way you live in England. Right. So bone rings, shell bracelets, and other curiosities sent by a sailor cousin from the South Sea Islands, and an odd assortment of stones, old coins, foreign stamps, crests, postmarks, which represent landmarks in the history of past fads. Lillian's canary hung in the sunniest window. Peggy's silkworms lay in a box on the sideboard, and Bobby's white mice reposed in much comfort in a cage on the chimney piece. Chimney piece is what we would now call a mantelpiece. So you've got the open fireplace here, and then the chimney goes up like that, and on the front of it, above where the fire is, there is often a piece of timber or stone that goes across that's a shelf, and you have ornamental things there, and that used to be called a chimney piece, which is because it was on the front of the chimney. We these days call it a mantelpiece, just as. But I'm describing it in case you don't know what those are or what they're talking about. The wall was adorned with school drawings and prize maps, fastened up with tacks. That's like drawing pins, tacks. A bookcase of much read volumes filled the space between the fireplace and the window, and in the corner might be found a miscellaneous collection of cricket bats, fishing rods, tennis rackets, bows and arrows, croquet mallets, sticks, balls, and ninepins, what we call 10-pin bowling, with those white thingies. That was preceded by ninepins, which were more straight stick-like, not the white things that are put up by machine. Ninepins and other articles very dear to the children's hearts, but which Nancy generally classed impartially under the head of lumber. Just a bunch of stuff that should be stored away in the lumber room. That's why she calls it lumber. Lumber traditionally in other places means a certain cut timber for like house building and things like this, but in this context it means junk, stuff that needs to be stored somewhere. The black puppy proved a delightful addition to the already long list of pets. Lillian hunted up a piece of blue ribbon to tie around his fluffy neck, but he objected to decorations and soon clawed it off and chewed it into a soft, slimy pulp. Yeah, there's a puppy for you, definitely. He ran after the children with little short, sharp barks, worrying at their heels until Aunt Helen declared that there would soon not be a whole stocking left in the establishment. He had a fray at once with Jack, but was much worsted by that worthy. Jack was the magpie, remember? Returning to Peggy for protection with his scrap of a tail between his legs, he tore Bobby's cricket ball to pieces. They're leather and they're stitched together. Licked the polish off father's boots, devoured Aunt Helen's galoshes. Galoshes? That's very old-fashioned and it's very English. Galoshes are like gumboots, but they go over your shoes and they're not huge. Sorry. I'm the one that hasn't got dirt all over it. So these are my slippers, but this shape is not the fluffy band around the top, but this shape is usually the shape of galoshes. And you have your shoe on your foot, and you put your foot with your shoe inside it, and the rubber galoshes stop you getting water in your shoes. So you don't have to take time to take your shoes off to go outside and get something from the garden and come back in. No good for wading around in knee-deep cow muck yards or anything like that. But if you've got to walk across a muddy surface that's not deep in puddles, galoshes work really well. So those are galoshes. I grew up hearing about them and didn't know what they were for so long. So that's why you get the bonus information. Devoured Aunt Helen's galoshes and nestled cosily down to sleep on the top of Nancy's best Sunday hat, which that luckless damsel had imprudently left in an open bandbox on the kitchen settle. Oh dear. Bandbox, kind of like a storage place for that sort of, for hats and things. Held together by bands, I guess. On the first night of his arrival, he howled so piteously on being left alone that Peggy insisted on taking him to bed with her. "He'll be no trouble, the darling," she said. "He'll just cuddle down on the rug at the foot of my bed and go to sleep like an angel. I know he will." She and Lillian made him a very snug little nest with the help of an old pillow, and he settled himself with a sigh of much content. "He's far better than a baby," declared Peggy, "for he doesn't want hushing and rocking, and he won't cry in the night." But his fond mistress had given her favourite his good character a little too soon. About midnight, the bright moonlight streamed in through the window, woke Master Rollo, who, having had a refreshing nap, was now very wide awake, and ready for anything. He heaved himself out of his wrappings, and with a delighted yelp, fell upon Peggy's curls, worrying them, that means grabbing with the teeth and shaking, worrying them with little gasps of joy, till she had to dive beneath the bedclothes, that's the blankets and sheets, to escape her too sportive pet. After that there was no more rest for Peggy or Lillian. They shared the room. Rollo was on the warpath and determined to make the most of his opportunities. It was in vain that Lillian held him in her arms and tried to soothe him to sleep. "He's just had a nap. Why is he going to go to sleep?" Anyone who's had a puppy will know this. Sorry. He grunted and whined and wriggled down onto the floor, where, with a shrill bark, he unearthed a cardboard box full of old gloves, which had been stored away under the bed. The chewing and tearing up of these afforded him much sport, as did also the bare feet of his mistress when she attempted to interfere. Peggy was at her wit's end, but she finally seized the tempestuous ball of fluff and dropped him to the bottom of the empty clothes basket. "He can't do any harm in there at any rate," she said hopefully. He could make such a noise, however, that he effectually banished slumber. He twisted and turned, he bit at the wickerwork and scratched with his claws, and after 10 minutes of much commotion managed to Old Candy Shop in Patley Bridge, England. Well done. Sorry, I just saw the jigsaw puzzle. It's a shame it's so small that it's hard for everyone to see. Actually, I wonder if I can make that bigger. It's quite a cool one. There you go. There's the jigsaw puzzle picture for you. It is quite cool. There's a set of, I can't do it because it's in the wrong place, but there's a set of scales in the front to the left, to that side of the window. And there's all these jars and pots and things. And I've told you before, actually, how they sell sweets, lollies, candy, by weight. Whereas in New Zealand, we do it by quantity, number. So like these are 5 for 10 cents, or when I was a kid, it would be really small ones would be 3 for 1 cent, that sort of thing. And so I'll have 3 of those, please, and I'll have 5 cents worth of those, and I'll have, those are 2 cents each, so I'll have one of those. No, can you put that one back, and I'll have this. Oh, such a nuisance. But yeah, it was quite an eye-opener when I went to England to discover that sweets with lollies were sold by weight. You say, I'll have 1/4 pound of those, which is 1/4 pound. A pound is roughly 500 grams, so half a pound is 250 grams, 125 grams. It's not a lot. If it's a block of butter, That would be the weight of that much butter in the block, because our blocks of butter are sort of like this big, longer, about that big, square almost. And they're 500 grams or a pound, which is very, very loose translation. There's a little bit missed in one of those measures. Find out where I got up to. He twisted and turned, he bit at the wickerwork and scratched with his claws, and after 10 minutes of much commotion managed to tip over the basket and crawl out in triumph to renew his attacks upon the shoes and other property of the despairing girls. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It's no use, groaned Lillian at last, getting out of bed and catching the small sinner. We shall just have to take it in turns to nurse him till morning. He's as lively as a cricket, and if we leave him raging about on the floor like that, we shan't have a thing left in the room, left unchewed. That's right. Never had a night seemed so long. The only one who thoroughly enjoyed himself was the puppy, who delighted to receive so much attention, pursued his diversions until the sun was well in at the window, when at length he snuggled into Peggy's pillow, composed himself to sleep, leaving his weary guardians only time for a brief rest before Nancy's unwelcome tap at the door was heard. Typical. Went to sleep. After this experience, Peggy was not so enthusiastic about having Rollo for a bedfellow, and he slept in the stables with the cats to bear him company. He was an amusing little fellow and soon learned to sit up and beg for biscuits, and Peggy promised herself to teach him many more accomplishments in the course of time. As he grew older, his pranks assumed rather a more serious form. Just look at what that precious dog of yours has done, Peggy, said Mr. Vaughan one day, bursting indignantly into the rose parlour with a dead kitten in his hand. There was a howl of consternation and woe from the children, for the poor little grey kit had been rather a favourite, and an instant search was made for the murderer. But Rollo had fled from the stern hand of justice, and though they sought him far and near, it was of no avail, and by bedtime he was still missing. No doubt he's hiding somewhere about the barns, said Lillian. He must be fearfully hungry, but it serves him right, the wretch. The children had long ago gone to bed, and Mr. Vaughan was on the point of following their example when he noticed a curious and most unusual lump beneath his counterpane. What on earth has that stupid Nancy given me a hot water bottle, on such a warm evening? He exclaimed, and flinging down the clothes he disclosed to view, the bedclothes, he disclosed to view not the expected earthenware bottle, because that's what hot water bottles were, but the shrinking and apologetic form of Master Rollo, who, if ever a dog could be said to own a conscience, surely showed he knew he had offended and repented heartily of his sins. He had probably been playing with the kitten and been too rough. Not unusual at that age. Mr. Vaughan laughed so much that he had not the heart to thrash the little rogue. It actually wouldn't have made any difference to the dog's behaviour, because he wouldn't have associated with the punishment with what he'd done wrong. So it's probably just as well. But next morning he devised a punishment for him which Peggy declared was far worse. The body of the dead kitten was securely tied round his neck with a piece of rope, and like the albatross in the ballad of the Ancient Mariner, it proved such a weight of shame that the guilty dog did not dare to show his face to his friends, but slunk away to hide his dishonoured head in dark corners of the barn or stackyard. He would have also responded to their repulsion. He would have actually realised they were avoiding him, and so therefore would have withdrawn. Mr. Vaughan was inflexible and would not allow Rollo to be relieved from his burden until the following evening. We must teach him a lesson he is not likely to forget, he said. I cannot have him touching any of the animals on the farm, or we shall have him killing the sheep when he is older. That's true, that does happen. So Rollo bore his punishment as best he could, and was fed behind the pigsty by the sympathetic Peggy, who, while mourning for the departed Ruffles, forgave her erring pet from the bottom of her heart when she saw the depths of his unutterable woe. And that's the end of that chapter. And I'm sorry we don't have a slightly nicer ending than that. But I'm pretty sure he probably learned from that one. It's not an unusual punishment for a dog to make them avoid something later on in the future, to actually have it the broken, damaged, dead, whatever thing attached to them in some way, like tied to their collar, so they can't escape it. And it's a reminder that this is an unpleasant thing, and so therefore they avoid that in the future. So it sounds heartless, but it can be a very effective way of making sure it doesn't happen again without actually having several incidents before they learn. So sorry about that. It's just the way with older books, we do get some older style things happen. Anyway, there we go. It's after 5. I haven't had someone coming in and saying, "Are you reading yet?" But that's just the way life goes. So it's after 5, and it's time for me to finish because I have to go and finish off with dinner. Um, it's mainly cooked, but I've got a few more things to put in before it's actually ready to eat. We eat at 6:30, and so it's going to have enough time in the slow cooker to finish cooking with the extra things in. Thank you so much for being here. It's been lovely, and I apologize, but I also am not sorry for all the diversions and rabbit trails and extra bits of information, and I really will try to get them so they're a lot shorter and more to the point. So the interesting bits are there, but we don't have all the waffle. That would be good. Anyway, great to have you all here. I love having the opportunity to spend this time with you, reading the books and chatting about things and reminiscing and all sorts of stuff like that. Lots of info today. Things for you to possibly go in and check up on. And I forgot to remind everybody of the bonus tip, which was to have a pen and paper handy, but I did reference using it myself. So there you go. I do need to remember to actually look at my list, and I see that somebody has probably been leaving me messages, so that's good too. Thank you very much. Great, as I said before, great to have you here, and thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.